Hi guys, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my channel. And in this video, I am going to be telling you guys the story and murder of Albert Snyder. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Ruth Brown was born in New York in the year of 1895. She dropped out of school in 8th grade and eventually took the job at a telephone company. She decided to focus on learning shorthand and typing so then she could get a job in an office somewhere. In 1914, at the age of 19 years old, she got a job for a motorboating magazine, and that is where she met Albert Snyder. Albert Snyder was 32 years old, and he was very career-focused up until he met Ruth Brown. In 1915, they decided to get married, and 3 years later, they brought their daughter Lorraine into the world. Like I said, Albert was very job-focused, and he was super successful, he loved providing for his family, and he eventually bought a gorgeous home in Queens, New York. Some even claim that he wasn't the easiest person to work for because he was a no-nonsense type of person. On March 20th, 1927, the couple attended a party, and parties weren't really Albert's thing. It wasn't really the scene that he was used to or the scene that he really enjoyed being a part of, but Ruth somehow found a way to always drag him into that party scene. And after the party was over, they eventually got home at 1:30 a.m. Hours later, 9-year-old Lorraine ran to the neighbor's house saying that someone attacked her family. And that is when the neighbor, Louis Mailhauser, had gone to the Snyder residence to check it out. When he got there, the front door was open and Ruth was at the foot of the stairs, bound with rope, in and out of consciousness. He freed her and carried her to the nearest bedroom, and that is where they found Albert. He was laying face down in bed, covered with a blanket, with a pistol beside him. When the police eventually arrived, they found the place was trashed. New York City Police Commissioner George Vincent McLaughlin had arrived on scene and started interviewing Ruth. This was her interview and what she had stated according to Daily News. We had been to a party at the home of Mr. and Mrs. William Fijian, 8935 Hollis Court Boulevard, Queens. We had a great time and we drank quite a bit. We got home around 1:30 in the morning. I went upstairs to my room while Albert drove the car to the back. The front door was open for about 5 minutes. We have separate rooms. Some little time after I went to bed, I got up. I thought I heard Lorraine calling. Lorraine is our daughter. She's 9. As I stepped out of the room and went toward her room, I passed another room. The room was where my mother stays when she is with us. A man came out of that room and hit me on the head. I believe that I heard him call to someone downstairs down below. It was about 8 o'clock when I awoke. I was stiff and strained, bound and gagged. I had a hard time taking the ropes off my hands. Then I took the gag out of my mouth and tried to scream. And that is when Lorraine woke up from her mother's screams. According to Ruth, the intruder had a long black mustache, a black slouch hat. He spoke very broken English, and then she also mentioned that she didn't see the other man at all. When the police get to Albert, the mattress that he was on was soaked in blood. It looked like his head was beaten with a heavy object and that he was strangled with picture wire. It was pulled so tight that it actually cut his throat, and his pockets were also turned inside out as if they had been searched. Ruth was asked if Albert had any money on him, and she said that he recently withdrew over $100, so it was most likely that that money was still on him. And this is what gave them the thought that it was a robbery gone wrong. The commissioner walked with Ruth around her home, and she pointed out certain bracelets, rings, and jewels that were missing. She was also missing a fur coat. They eventually moved to the police station to finish the interview so that they can kind of deal with Albert's body without the family there. Reporters quickly heard about what happened and bombarded everyone with questions before they could even leave their house. They asked the police and Ruth if she was being arrested, and the police commissioner assured them that she was just being taken in for more questions and that she was not a suspect, and he also gave them a description of the male that Ruth had described. Ruth and Lorraine both gave their statements in separate rooms. By the time they were done, a discovery was made. The items that Ruth claimed were missing were found in her house and under her mattress. Before questioning Ruth about this, they actually asked Lorraine if her parents ever fought, and she said they fought all the time. After searching Albert and Ruth's house, they paid a visit to the couple that actually hosted the party that night. Mr. Fidgen said that it was a pretty uneventful night. He said that they played cards, and he also mentioned that they host parties pretty regularly, so it wasn't really out of the ordinary. Mrs. Fidgen actually went to school with Ruth back in the day, so they were actually pretty close friends. Albert, however, had an altercation with her brother, Mr. George Huff. And basically, Albert was just upset about losing some money. Detectives asked where George went after the party, and they were told that he should have gone back to his hotel room. Detectives go to check that out, and the staff did confirm that he had gotten there around the time that he was supposed to be getting back. Back to the Snyder residence, they found a small little pin with the initials JG engraved on the back of it, and it was actually found where Albert was murdered. When they went down to the basement, they actually found an address book hidden in the corner with the names and addresses of 27 men. So they decided to take that to the station to go over the list of people. When the coroner finally got hold of the body, they were trying to figure out if Albert died from strangulation or the blows to the head. Detectives were also curious to see if any of the names in the address book matched the initials JG, and one did, Judd Gray. And this discovery caused Ruth to be interrogated a second time. She was asked what kind of relationship she had with her husband, and she said that she was a major night owl, whereas he was the complete opposite. He also had a boat, and he loved to take it out during the day. She was then asked about their fighting, and at first she denied it, but then once she was told what Lorraine had mentioned to detectives, she said that they were always at odds. Then they mentioned the missing items. They asked if she knew if they were missing or if she didn't, and at first she said that they were missing, but then they told her that they found them under the mattress, and she tried to play it off and say that she's just very forgetful and that she did put them there. And lastly, they asked who was Judd Gray. When that name was mentioned, she shot up looking very worried. She asked if he confessed, and the detectives decided to play with that a little bit. They said, yeah, he did confess. She broke down crying and decided to tell her story. She said she's known Gray for almost 2 years. Supposedly, they became more than friends and started seeing each other behind Albert's back. They talked about killing him many, many times before, and they actually wanted to poison him at first, but they realized they couldn't pull that off, so Gray had waited for the two to come home from that party. After Albert fell asleep, Ruth let Judd into the house, and they decided to make it look like a robbery. He took a heavy weight upstairs and struck Albert 2 times in the head and finished him off with a picture wire. And Ruth claims that she had nothing to do with the actual killing. All she did was let him into the house. Detectives asked about the pin found, and Ruth said that it actually was Albert's first love that gave it to him. I guess she was about to pass away and she gave it to him shortly before it happened, and her name was Jessie Guichard. Judd was staying at a hotel in New York. Police arrested him and charged him with murder, but he still denied any allegations. When they searched his room, they found a metal bar and ripped clothing, however nothing that actually linked him to the murder. He was brought in for questioning, and they told him that Ruth told them everything. He insisted that he had nothing to do with it, and he even signed an affidavit. I am 34 years old. I will be 35 years of age on July 8th, 1927. I am married. I live with my wife, Mrs. Isabella Gray. I have one daughter, Jane, 10 years old. We live in East Orange, New Jersey. I was born in Cortland, New York. My father is dead. My mother resides at West Orange, New Jersey. About March 7th, I left my home on my business trip through New York State. I have known Albert Snyder's wife, whose name is Ruth Brown Snyder, for the past 2 years. I was introduced to her in either May or June of 1925 by Harry Polsom. He admitted that he picked her up through a flirtation in the restaurant. From that time on, I became friendly with her. I have talked with the mother and the daughter, but I have never met or talked to Albert Snyder. I swear that I have not seen or talked with Ruth Snyder in person since about the 4th week in February in 1927 or the 1st week in March of the same year. The last time that I talked with Mrs. Ruth Snyder was on Thursday night, March 17th, from the Hotel Seneca at Rochester. I stopped there Wednesday night, March 16th, and Thursday night, March 17th. I checked out of the hotel on Friday, March 18th between 5 and 6 p.m. and arrived at Syracuse at 8:15. I went directly to the Hotel Onondaga. I stayed there from Friday night until about 2 a.m. on March 21st when I was brought into the police headquarters for investigation. The officer found the gray roll, a pair of rubber gloves, an iron pitch bar, and a pair of brown Oxford shoes which were in my hotel room. I had taken the same out of my trunk, which I had sent to the Syracuse Trunk Company Saturday morning, March 19th, to have repaired. Since knowing Mrs. Snyder, I have visited her on a number of different occasions. The only time that she ever accompanied me was on an automobile trip. We were gone about a week through New York State. She left the daughter with her mother. I swear that I know nothing about who committed the murder and swear that I had no part in the murder in any shape or form. The press that this case endured caused more evidence to show up. A man who worked at a nearby hotel said that he had letters for Mr. Gray from Ruth, and Ruth had actually mailed those letters to the hotel so that Mrs. Gray wouldn't find them. The letter mentions that she's excited about something, and this is assumed to be the murder. She also signed each letter, "Love Your Mommy." Ruth and Judd were both charged with murder, and on March 22nd, 1927, they both pled not guilty, but they were both blaming each other for the murder. They were both tried together, and the prosecution argued that they had both planned it. Gray's side of the story is that they both hit Albert's head with a weight. When he did it, Albert tried to get up afterwards, so that's when Ruth took it and did the same thing. And then they strangled him with the picture wire. However, according to the coroner, Albert was already dead when he was strangled. During the trial, Ruth tried to convince everyone that she was not involved whatsoever. Supposedly, Gray forced her to do certain things, such as upping Albert's life insurance from $15,000 to $25,000. She claims that when Gray attacked him, she tried to stop him, but he shoved her to the ground, and by the time she got up, Albert was already dead. And of course, Gray testified that they both planned it, but Ruth was the one to actually kill him. He said that she used him because she knew that he was in love with her. He says that she tricked him into killing Albert. The jury only deliberated for 98 minutes. Judd Gray and Ruth Snyder were both found guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced to death. On January 12, 1928, both were executed back to back. Gray went first, and he actually read a letter right beforehand from his wife that was basically forgiving him for everything that he'd done, and this brought him a lot of peace. He walked into the chamber and spent his last words warning people for doing wrong. Ruth went next, and it was actually noted that she was acting pretty erratically, and it looked like she had aged quite a bit since the trial. She said she was too young to die, and she just begged God to forgive her. And she started praying as they started the injection, and she died 3 minutes later. A reporter for the Daily News actually snuck a small camera into the death chamber during this, and this was the first ever picture of electrocution. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, give it a thumbs down. I don't really care. Subscribe if you're new. Comment down below videos you would like to see next. Let me know what you guys thought on this case, and I'll see you guys in the next one.